Hey, everybody, welcome. Today on the Witching Hour, I have a truly special guest. So special, I'm bringing him back. He is renowned witch, psychic, medium, and teacher and author, Devin Hunter. You might know him from his best selling Witch Power series, The House of Spirits, and Modern Witch podcast. But now he is back with a kind of haunting and powerful new book, The Bad Vibes. We're diving into psychic defense, energetic hygiene, magical boundaries, and the unseen forces that shape our spiritual lives. Get ready for a deep magical dive. Welcome back, Devin. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. I know last time we talked about your plant book, and
Mm.
I refer to that all the time. And who doesn't need to deal with the bad vibes? So let's start with that, the bad vibes. What inspired this book? And what exactly do you mean by bad vibes? Are we talking ghosts, curses, energy vampires, or all of the above?
All of the above for sure. Yeah. This, oh goodness. So this took years to write, and it's the thinnest book that I think I've published. And there were a couple goals going into it. The big one was that I kept seeing material coming out that wasn't necessarily what I would be advising my clients to do. And so that was the first thing. And I wanted to have something where it was all there, everything. Like if you wanted to hire me to come in and take care of the situation, how would I go about taking care of the situation? And so that's mostly in here. So I would say about 75% of the how do we take care of bad vibes that I have had to deal with as a professional psychic and medium over the last 20 years. There's, it's all in here. So it was really that I wanted to give people a handbook. And that's why it's kind of part field guide. It's the bad vibes field guide, but it's partly there for people who are being afflicted by these experiences, whether it's you have just bad vibes that you're feeling when you step into work and it's affecting you just in the way that you carry your day, or you have a family generational curse that you've been battling and it's creating these issues. Like there are so many things that we can interpret as bad vibes. And so when I chewed on that for a minute, I was like, we kind of handle all of it in a similar kind of way. And if we can pick out what that golden thread is, then the rest is just going to be making sure it fits to the individual situation. And so thus the Bad Vibes Field Guide was written. But it's unlike anything I've written before. So I'm really excited about that. And there are no spells. There's no magic in this. This is written for people who, as a psychic medium and as somebody who works with the public, as you know, it doesn't matter what our spirituality is and how we look at things. It matters what their spirituality is and how they look at things. And so this is how I wrote the book. I wrote it so that it wasn't an intrusive experience for people. You could pick it up regardless of your spirituality and it'll fit. And including agnostic people, including people who are like, I could tell something's going on, but I don't want to believe in it. Like you're in here too. So I tried to cover all the bases.
I think that's beautiful because, again, in this, we're not going to get political or anything, but there's a lot of bad vibes in the world today.
Mm,
2025 is kind of a bad vibe year for
mm,
a lot of people.
Yeah.
So when you're talking, again, you're talking all about energy. You say that not all energy is meant for us. So what are some signs that we're carrying or absorbing energy that isn't ours?
So there's actually a lot of signs, and I try to go through. There's actually a scale that kind of created for in the book so that we can respond to it in a way that's appropriate. Because not everything needs, So once you do all this, once you do this work, you find that people are stepping in things all the time, and we're kind of trudging it along. And we may have experiences from childhood that we buried, and then they start bubbling up as adults, and then that causes spiritual and psychic distress. Right. So there's all kinds of things that can be going on. And so when we are talking about how to approach that, it's so unique to the individual and to the situation. And there are some go-to practices and exercises and, kind of approaches to things. But ultimately, we have to approach this idea that you are feeling in juxtaposition energetically to some sort of quality in the environment around you or inside of you. And we need to fix that. We need to bring things into harmony, into balance. And so like, this is a really rough year. Like so the book comes out, of course, as all of this stuff starts happening. And I was like, oh, the universe is testing me. Like this is without question. Even writing the process of writing the book, I had one of the most kind of traumatic experiences I've had as an adult happen. And it was so clear that it was the universe kind of going, all right, you're going to write about this stuff. Let's put you to the test. And so, so I went through all of this stuff. So I was kind of prepared mentally to have, I thought I could take care of myself. I could get through this whatever the universe and the politics want to throw at me. And then everything started happening, and the world suddenly filled with all of this anxiety and all of this fear and all of this rage, and that it impacts you as a spiritual person. And so, I actually went back. I wrote another book in between this being published
Wow.
and actually completing it. And so I went back and, I bet there's things I need to go and just kind of revisit. And I'm so glad I did, because I was inspired in a moment, and I wrote it down, thank the gods. And so I was able to go back and go, oh yes, that's the thing. So I've been taking care of myself. I pulled in a lot more. I'm not on social media as much as I used to live on social media. And I pulled back a lot, and I've been applying the exercises and things that I talked about in the book, and it's been good. It's been keeping me sane, and it's been keeping me safe. And I realize how important, and I write about this in the book, sanctuary, essentially, the term, the word, thought, the idea of sanctuary, and how important that is. And we deserve that in our personal lives. And so the book always kind of circles back to this idea of, do you feel at harmony and at peace? Do you feel as though you are safe? Do you feel as though and why wouldn't you? And we go through all the stuff. I mean, it starts off little things, I had a bad day. I feel changed after I left a room, or, a space or an environment, or, a workplace or something like that, to I feel like I'm being visited by spiritual beings that I don't understand that might be hurting me. And what do I do about that? And so all of these things are mixed in, and we're human. So we can't always separate the things that make us feel bad. Right. And sometimes everything builds into a big balloon or a big cloud, and it just is kind of there all the time. We have to take it apart piece by piece. And so that's what we're trying to do with the book. We're trying to give people the tools to take care of it in that kind of way.
That sounds fabulous. Because again, so much of the world is just even unaware. It takes them a week to figure out that they feel bad about
Mhm.
something.
Yeah.
So this is good. It's an awareness. What I really love about your approach is that you really blend psychic mediumship and witchcraft, as like I like to do too. How do you navigate between those worlds, or are they really one and the same for you?
This is the question of my life. Like literally, this has been the question of
Yeah.
my life. I have so back in the day, if you, well, my friends know this because I complain about it all the time. Not all the time, but I used to. I have done the shadow work to get over it. But at one point in time, I was in line to become a psychic for an organization that was very, very popular and made lots of money. I was lined up to make very good money. And then they found out that I was a witch, and they cut me from the job. And it was like shattering to me, because it would have been security and things in ways that we are not guaranteed as people who work in the industry. The industry was so weird to say, but it basically kind of is these days. And so it was really hard. I wanted to be, my work has always been psychic in nature. I don't know how to separate my witchcraft from my psychism. They're just the same thing. And so, for me, I always thought being a professional medium was going to be the road that I walked on, just for a career path. And I quickly learned that the world was never going to give me that. Right. Like I was always going to be the psychic witch guy. I was always going to, and my husband wrote a book called Psychic Witch, right? Like that idea was like, you can't get the witch out of you once it's there. It's a stain, right? Now, I love the stain. I think it looks fabulous. I think it adds to depth and texture and all of those things. But I know that there's people that it scares, just that term scares. And I don't need them to be scared. I need them to do the thing to take care of the issue. You know what I mean? So I will approach you however is best for you. In my personal life, I consider myself a witch. I have always considered myself a witch. I love being a magical person. And and I've done the thing. I'm on the spectrum. And so I've done the thing where I've rationalized myself out of my psychic experiences, even though I've had these I felt and experienced this personally. I've been able to talk myself out of that, like rationalize myself out of it. And and go through that process. Was this real? Was I just talking myself into this? Was I just, and then coming back full circle and be like, no, that was real. Other people experienced it too. Like, so I'm glad to have that kind of space as a witch where we have to challenge and test ourselves and question ourselves. And we share as in the witchcraft community a lot. And so it's wonderful to have a magical community of people to bounce things off of. Whereas in the psychic world, I compare the two a lot to people who aren't familiar with the kind of the differences. If you just want to go right hard line there. But in the psychic world, as professional psychic, we're challenged a lot. So I will say, like, there's a lot of questioning, there's a lot of having to prove ourselves, there's a lot of, which I think is good. I think validity is important, and being able to stand firm in that. But you don't get a lot of that in witchcraft. In the witchcraft world, it's a lot more. Oh, really? You felt that? Well, oh, I felt that too. Like, it's different. So it's a little more playful, right, in the witchcraft world. And because of that playfulness, we're allowed to be a little bit more mad scientists, I think, in how we would approach situations. And I love that for me because it's allowed me to be kind of a spiritual artist in the way that I do things. So my work is a hodgepodge. I think we'll just say a hodgepodge. Heinz 57, if you will. If you're old enough to understand that term out there, people, that's what I feel like it is. I feel like it's just kind of a little bit of everything. And I don't know how to separate them and be anything other than Devin.
Good. I think that's why I like you so much, because I am the same. And I couldn't even imagine to know how many jobs I've lost for being a witch, especially in the industry.
Yeah.
What do you do? It is what it is. But speaking of witches, you've taught many witches over the years. It's cool. You're a teacher. What do you find people struggle with the most when it comes to protecting or managing their energy? Let's go back to energy.
Honestly, and this is going to sound so cheesy because I know everyone's going to be like, shadow work. It's taking care of yourself, in that really human way that only we can. The sentience is a burden. I think it's just something we need to kind of being sentient, being conscious is a burden, right? Like
Yep.
it gives us all of this amazing ability to sort through things and understand the universe and kind of have the universe live through us in these cool, interesting ways. But it also makes us question things and it makes us doubt things and it makes us take things into conclusions in natural ways that maybe aren't the healthiest for us, right? Our brains are incredible, but they're not always working for us. Sometimes they're working against us, right? And so in witchcraft, we get a lot of people who are experiencing crisis. Like there's kind of a blend of people in my classes. There's people who are going through something traumatic or had experienced something traumatic and are trying to get their power back. And that can be anything from a really horrible childhood to a bad relationship to always feeling different and then finally reconciling. There's many different things in that. Then there are people who just are out, and I kind of fall into this camp, I think. We're just out to explore and learn as much as we can because we are addicted to spirit in one form or another. I think is just kind of the best way to kind of put it. And so you get this mix, and it's the spectrum of all of that, right? Like totally, like it really is. And I think there's a lot of things that, like if you listen to the telepathy tapes and things like that, there's a lot of talk about what does it mean when you have a traumatic experience in life and you're a spiritual psychic being. What does it do to you? So for me, it all of this to say to distill like this, I'm getting I'm talking in a tangential circle here. It all boils down to this idea that you are so much more powerful than you think you are. You have so much more power over the circumstance, over your life, over everything than you really truly know. And the game has been rigged against us to believe we don't have the power. And I'm not saying this in a cheesy metaphysical, like make a vision board, it'll all be okay kind of way. I'm saying this in the world is really stacked up against us. This is what witches have been fighting against since the beginning of our inception. Like we're always in juxtaposition to the hard paradigm of whatever the ruling thing is. And so in our case, people come to witches these days mostly, or come to witchcraft because they're looking for power over a situation. They want their power back over something, or they want that knowledge. And we know that knowledge is power. So they're looking for that power, right? It all kind of, and that was my first book. That was what that was about, and kind of addressing that. And I mean that literally, like it is a game of power. And the conclusion in this book, I say flat out, it's about who has the power in these situations. And that's a tricky thing for people to really understand, because often the thing that's taking the power away is plugged into you, if not emanating from you. And it just is what it is. Like we are creating our own blocks, our own issues all the time. That's what shadow work is there to take care of. But also go to therapy. Like go talk to a therapist. Go talk to somebody who can just help you process the things that make you feel ugh, right? Like I think about I was telling my friend the other day, like I have this thing where I think about myself as like a teenager and I'm like, oh, I wasn't the best person then. I wasn't the nicest thing. And I wasn't the nicest boyfriend or the nicest. And I was 16. Like, what was I expecting? Like, I was 16 living in a weird world and very confused. And, like what I was expecting. But that doesn't have to cause me long-term anxiety, right? That doesn't have to build into these things. But here I am, almost 40 years old, and I was reconciling the fact that I kind of overcompensate now in my marriage because I was a bad. Yeah. So this is this little tiny thing, right? That people would think is inconsequential. However, in all these other relationships, that same behavior created a lot of psychic and spiritual trauma between me and my partners that would ultimately cause us to break up. We'd go to bed angry at each other. The house would fill up with just dread. I didn't want to go home. That became the space that became my sanctuary. My sanctuary was filled with dread, right? So in a very just everyday kind of way, these things create really big problems for us over time. They can amount to these huge, giant issues that we have to take apart. I had this amazing psychic teacher many, many years ago use the elephant in a room analogy. Like, okay, well, this is an elephant and it's in a room. We all can see it. Blah, 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 blah. She took it a little further and she said, the only way to get the elephant out of the room is piece by piece. And we all went, oh, and she's
Oh,
like, it's
yeah.
going to get
Me too. I
messy.
went, oh,
It's going to get messy, isn't it? And I went, holy yeah, oh yeah, it is, isn't it? And that's this work, right? It's the messy work of okay, what do we got to do to really take care of this? So let's say you have a generational curse in your family. What do we got to do to really take care of it? It isn't just doing some rituals with your sister to break the cycle or whatever. It's also going to therapy. Like it just is. You got to go to therapy to deal with that crap, or else you're going to just inject it onto your kids. There's a mental thing. There's a very, just again, sentience is a pain in the butt. It's, like there's a thing where, but there's also these spiritual things that happen to it. We can't divide that. And I think we tend to in our world. So when I teach witchcraft and we're getting into this part of it, I'm so often telling people like, if you don't want to go to therapy, which I understand people have feelings and thoughts about that. I think it's great. I get to talk about myself for an hour. Are you kidding? Like, come on. Like, what? Yeah, I'm here for it. But I understand that's not everybody's thing. But so what I always tell people to do is you want at least one friend, at least one, you should get a gaggle if you can, but at least one friend in your life who genuinely wants the best for you, right? Who isn't trauma bonded to you. Your trauma bonded friends are always going to keep you down. And it's just because you're all trauma bonded. It's just what it is, right? It's hard to lift each other up when those things are happening. But if you get a friend who just is like, hey, I genuinely, my success is not caught up in your success. I just like being along for the ride. If you have one of those friends, start talking about your stuff with them. And the other thing too, I find that people who are in the spiritual vein of things, who are feeling and sensing things and blah, 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 people come to us for advice all the time, like all the time, right? And
yep.
you give really good advice, don't you?
Yeah.
Take your own darn advice, flip the script, treat yourself like a client, treat yourself like, somebody who is coming to you, and then do those things. And you will be amazed at how successful you will be. So I think so much of this aspect when it comes to the craft and it comes to the witching part is that we get called in to take care of these situations for other people. Right. And that was the other part that the book is written for the afflicted, but the book is also written for people who have to go take care of the afflicted.
Yeah.
And that's what that long subtitle is about. But because we're always the ones that are called in the last minute to take care of the thing that no one else can take care of.
Yep.
And that puts us in awkward situations sometimes. So that's the other part of what the book is addressing. But that's what I end up going through with people mostly is how do we get over our personal blocks? And then how do we go help people when they're in real crisis? Because when someone's in crisis and things are really happening, like there is a spiritual attack, there is something happening, they're not going to stop and go to therapy and go through this. It is a piece of a much bigger puzzle. But you as the person who's going in and helping people, you need to have your stuff taken care of. You got to be right with yourself or else there will always be problems because if we're really dealing with a spiritual attack, we're really dealing with a psychic entity of some kind that is adversely affecting the environment, the first thing that it's going to start doing is using your weaknesses, the thing that you perceive as your weakness, against you. That's what they do, right? Because it's about getting power. So they start flipping the script. So that's why you have those stories of people who were once alcoholics getting into these situations where suddenly the house is haunted and booze are starting to show up in places. Like the liquor bottles are falling. Like these things are, that's trying to trigger that experience, right? Or if you were a kid who was in an abusive household and then you start having these things start to trigger as you're an adult, right? And you start finding, well, why am I being aggro all of a sudden? Like all of this stuff is related. So it's one of those things where, as a witch, I think what we have to do as witches is be aware of how energy connects. As a psychic, we have to be aware of how energy connects and how we relate to that. But most psychic work is about perception. And I think we bridge into the witchy stuff when we start talking about projection and we start talking
Right.
about pushing back with our psychic senses.
Oh, that is brilliant. Okay, going back, you have written about spirits, deities, ancestors, but how do we know? Because you were talking about things happening in the house. How do we know if what we're dealing with is a helpful guide or a harmful influence? When we're getting these messages or situations and things.
Yeah. So this is a tricky one. You asked a really tricky one. And the reason why is because, and this is something that not a lot of psychics are gonna break into because they're just not into the anatomy of things, I think, in the same way. But your spirit guides and these kind of, we'll say, darker spirits that will come in and guide you to ways that you don't want to be, they're coming in the same place. And so they attach in the same way. So I had a client who had she'd been kind of severed from what we'll call just her spirit guides. We'll call them that. And she doesn't feel enough. And she did live one of those lives where she always felt connected to things. She always felt like she was plugged in and that, spirit was communicating to her. And then it just kind of went away one day. And it was, she's in this relationship with a guy who was alcoholic and he was abusive and these things. And she was trying to fix him. And it led into the situation where she really ended up indulging in just aspects of her personality that she didn't want to indulge in, but it was environmental. She was influenced. And, over the course of time, this energy slipped in and it took the place of where her spirit guide would be. So when she's checking in with herself, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing in the right time? She's getting a very different message than what her guide would have done. And this is easy to fix for the most part because it's just, well, that's not the right signal. I need to go flip to the right signal. But you don't know that because it's just right there. It's the signal you're hearing, right? And if you're not somebody who's into the 75 flavors of everything and trying to discern what each of these different frequencies really are, you're not going to stop and think, oh, this feels different from my normal guidance or my normal thing. And so when people talk about, when I was a kid, I went to a Pentecostal church and the minister would talk about the demon of alcoholism. And we were, but then I became a pagan. We'd laugh about the demon of alcoholism. How silly is that? That's real. That's a real thing though. But it is. And so you get these situations where if you're not taking care of yourself in the right way, you'll trip and go into some of these experiences that I think are very, very tricky. And that's the nature of those darker kind of things, right? Is that they are there it's all about power. And I don't think the other thing too is I don't always want people to assume maliciousness on their part either, because they're just living. This is how they eat, right? This is how they go about their. It's a very tricky situation. It's a very dynamic environmental factor. Like lots going on with that. However, what I would do is I would always go back to what I refer to as your home frequency. So screw the world, screw the spirit, screw everything. What do you feel like, right? What do you feel like when you are grounded and balanced and you feel like you are empowered and you are connected? Screw everything else. What does that feel like? That is the one true frequency that is you. That is the one true thing that you can count on beyond everything else. You can't count on anybody else or anything else. You can count on that. And so if you can function from that place, if you can go and visit this place, which we do in meditation, when you're doing, your spiritual alignment and centering exercises, all of this is there for like, it matters, folks. These basic things really do play off in the long run. So if you can go back to that and you know what that feels like, then you have this really wonderful place to gauge the reality that's being presented to you. And that's what I want to kind of also say about that is that if you have a darker thing that's around, that's there, your reality becomes darker. And we interpret it as darkness. We interpret it as a negative or lower vibe uh, frequency. And that we just naturally interpret that in the same way that you instinctively shy away from dead things, right? You're like, "Ugh," or things that are, "Ugh." We instinctively know to stay away from things that will harm us, right? That may, those dead things may have disease, or they may have that thing that's rotting may have bacteria. Oh, we know instinctively, there's no one need to tell us nothing, right? To run from that stuff, right? And so this is part of the overall system that we work with as spiritual people, right? Our instincts are telling us these things. Listen to that, but it's in order to make sure you can trust those instincts, in order to make sure that you can trust yourself when you don't know that you can trust what you're perceiving. I would say go back to that home frequency, go back to that place of pure resonance that is truly you, and compare. And then have the balls to, regardless of who you are, have the balls, have the kahunas to get away from things if it's not right for you.
Right.
That's the hard part.
Because we
That's
really
the
do
hard part.
know. It's just
Mhm.
doing it. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so let's talk about psychic shielding then. Energetic boundaries. Do you have a favorite technique or anything that's something you always return to no matter what, or anything you suggest for people?
It's changed over the years, right? So and I think it depends on who you are and what you do and what you want in the world, right? So for me, when I was before I became a writer and I started publishing books, the level of spiritual protection I needed was very different than what it was once that happened. And because I was just getting attention I wasn't getting, there was psychic energy being flown at me that I wasn't used to. And I didn't have the channels and things kind of set up to control how I was being affected by those things. And it actually took a minute to figure out. I thought it was like, oh, I know my stuff. I'm strong and protected. But then here's this whole new set of circumstances that I wasn't prepared for. And that was something that it took me a while to learn was that we are constantly having to adjust and shift to the experience and to the environment. And that's a hard thing for people. I think it's, I'm going to use a Star Trek reference. I'm going to totally nerd out and use a Star Trek reference. So the Borg would have this ability to adjust their personal shield frequency, and so they're able to, no matter what's coming at them, it might get one shot in, it might get two shots, but you're not going to get a third shot because by the time that's happened, the shields have adjusted. It knows it's the frequency of your attack, right? And so I've learned that's the way to go about it. The way to go about it is to keep yourself shielded and protected, but also be able to move through and modulate your shields on a whim if you need to. And that's the hard thing. That's the tricky thing because it requires you to know a lot of different skills and it requires you to understand yourself in a way that just takes time. And so what I tell people is, we start with that home frequency thing. We start with that idea of who we are and understanding the mind, body, and spirit. And I know that that sounds so cheesy. I was just talking to my partner about this. We want to call the mind, body, and spirit all of these different things. So it sounds a little more exotic and like the three cauldrons, we come up with all these different terms for it, but it really is just the mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
And it's not just the mind, body, and spirit. The mind, body, and spirit are incredible. And that's what all of our spiritualities, all of our religions are here trying to figure out. And so, it's a beautiful thing, these relationships that we have. And once you understand and appreciate that, then twisting or changing your shields, your own protections to meet the demands of the environment is way easier, way easier. And so, I always tell people, yeah, have your, there's if you're an occultist and you're doing ritual work, you're going to use a very different type of protections. Like you're going to cast big circles. You're going to cast spheres that are meant to keep things in and keep things out, right? Because you're pumping lots of energy, you're producing lots of energy. If you are, if you're it's the same person could go to a psychic shop or a witchy store and do readings, and that energy work is not going to work. That is going to keep them from being able to connect to their clients and the spirits their clients are bringing in, and so on and so forth. So then we have to shift and shield then, right? And so if I could, that could be my Saturday, and then my Sunday could go be signing books somewhere, and I have to shift again, right? And it has to be a different thing because I have a different set of people coming in at me in different ways. So that's what you have to be able to modulate. You have to be able to shift and turn, and you have to know, like, okay, I'm leaving work. I'm going to my parents' house. My parents are super, super, let's say, conservative, and it's uncomfortable for me to be there. So I'm going to put this type of protection around me now. And I'm going to shift. My husband does a lot of work with his aura, and he shifts his aura to make different shapes, which, is something that we learned very early on, but he's got it down to a science. So he's like, oh, I'm going to be a porcupine now, and he just figures out, and it just depends on where we're going. And that's kind of what you just got to learn to modulate. You have to learn to meet the moment. And that's difficult for some. And so, like, I wear my pentacle. That's like an everyday, all around great protection
Me too.
for, I would honestly say, yeah. So I would say 40% of the random bleh, I don't deal with because I have my pentacle and it gets cleansed and it's protected. And same thing for you, right?
Yeah,
But there's
same
still
thing. This is
60%
the
of
one I don't
bleh.
take off. Well, everything
Yeah,
else.
I shower with it. I sleep with it. Like, this is my, yeah, it's, yeah,
But
yeah.
I love that. And I agree 100%. But how much does, again, in the spiritual protection we're talking about, how much role does intention play? And how do we stay strong with that intent when we are feeling energetically drained? Say we're there, we've been with our parents too long or whatever.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you keep it strong when you don't have it to keep strong?
Yeah. So I have learned from a guy who's become kind of a mentor of mine over the years, Ivo Dominguez Jr. He's another writer. He's also he's into psychic work in the way that we're into psychic work when he helps a lot of people deal with a lot of strange things and, stuff like that. And he kind of bestowed the wisdom that you can pre-program or pre-create psychic experiences that you can kind of use when you need to. And witchy terms, to put that into witchy word, it'd be like doing a spell and then reserving it until you need it, right? So creating a spell or creating an energy or amassing energy, let's say putting it in a little ball or something like that, and then storing that somewhere so that when you are at your mom and your dad's and you're feeling drained, you can access that energy. You can do the final little, you can release the pin on the grenade kind of a thing. But you already set it all up when you were ready and when you felt like you could handle that thing, right? So preparedness, I think, if it's kind of part of it, right? But then the other thing is, I think we touched on it earlier. I mean, you mentioned it. It's boundaries, right? Like, it's just knowing, like, I'm done. And this was the glory of my late 30s, was learning I could do that. I did not know that I could just be like, I'm done now and be done. I didn't realize that I had no idea. It never crossed my mind. And my partner was like, are you done? I'm like, I think I'm done now. He said, we can be done now. And that I could be done always. Like, I could just, anywhere I'm at, if I just want to, I could be, and yeah, you can. And that's kind of an interesting thing. And even with my parents and things where, it's a weird situation, but I can be done. And I've let them know, like, no disrespect. I love you. But if I reach my bandwidth, I reach my bandwidth. And I'm gonna politely head out. And that's that way I can have a relationship with you in the future. Like, it's things like that. So, there's a little bit like that. But I would say, from a witchy standpoint, prepare for moments of vulnerability, prepare for moments where you aren't going to be at your top, right? Like, there are certain, and I'm not going to reveal this, but there are certain astrological events that happen and it just makes me tired and I don't want to do crap. I will just bleh and melt on my couch, and that's just where I'm at for like 2 days. And I don't care. And I'm okay with that. And then is what it is. But then there's the opposite will happen too, where there's times that I'm like, I am awake for like what feels like 2 days because the moon is crazy and I'm just doing spells and doing all this stuff. It works for me, right? But in those moments of when I feel great, I prepare. One of the easy ways to do this, and I write about this in one of my books, one of the first 3 books I write about that. I think it was the first, it might have been the first one, but there's this thing I tell all my students to do, which is put it in a crystal. And we all know I love my crystals. I have a house full of them, and they're easy to find. And you can just, last time I was down in Hollywood and I was at a studio, I yanked some rocks out of the ground because I was like, I want to come back. And, and so so I have this energy, this rock that's connected to this place. That's great. Right. Well, I have done that my whole life. And so I have rocks from places that make me feel safe and secure. I have rocks from places, so you can go to those things. You can collect those things that are tokens that connect you to places where you can feel grounded or where you are grounded. But you can also take some of that energy that you're feeling when you're jazzed about life and life is really feeling good and you feel connected. and you're just brimming with happiness, or you're just brimming with pride or whatever. And you can take a crystal and you can put that energy in the crystal and just, and it's just happiness. That's all it is. Right. This became something that I started doing. Well, say intuitively, but really my spirit told me to do it. And so I started doing this when I was like 19, 20,
Wow.
and it changed my life because there were days when I would come home from work and everything felt helpless and hopeless, but I could pick up that rock or that, that crystal, and I could sit there, and it was full of all the days where I felt amazing and I felt like I was in the right place at the right time. And that was this other thing that helped me guide back to my true north, whatever that was at the moment. And so I'm always telling my students, put it in a crystal, right? Because the bigger version of this is that when we go into like do a house cleansing for somebody. So let's say there's like even let's say there's an extreme experience where there's like a residual haunting in the house, where there's a spirit imprint that just kind of replays or something like that. What we would do to take care of that would be to overwrite the tape, kind of. So back in the day, just if you're younger than probably 30, you probably don't know this, but back in the day, you could record uh, on cassette tapes, and then you could record over that recording. And sometimes you did it on accident. It was terrible, but that's also how we would get our favorite songs off the radio and things like that. So the metaphor that I'm using is this idea that you can write over the file basically that's there installed, right? And so just like when you delete something, it doesn't really disappear. It's there. It's in this place that says it can be written over. That's basically what we do. So we're going to go into an environment. We're going to write over. We're going to take the good vibe, right? And we're going to put a good vibe into the wall. And so I tell people to like get your friends, have a like a wine party where y'all start giggling and you're just having this like all this bubbly energy, and then go touch the walls of your home. You want to cleanse your home, cleanse it with joy and laughter from your friends. It'll change you for life. Like, you'll never feel a cleanliness like that ever. You're pumping joy into the walls of your home, right?
Yeah.
So I do that when I'm taking care of residual hauntings and things like that. All right, let's have a little party. Let's bring your friends over. We're gonna do this thing, and we're gonna write over the frequency that's there. Right.
I love that, and I agree, and that's next level of what I do. Let's bring in laughter. Let's do this. Let's
Hmm.
a room that's gotten so dark. I've
Yeah.
never had let's have a party. Let's bring the one. I love that. We're going there.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is fascinating. Everybody out there, I think the world needs this book in 2025. Because there's bad vibes out there, and this looks like a perfect handbook. So the last thing, just leaving everybody with something. What this is all a bit about is about reclaiming power. Obviously, it's taking that power back. So, is there one little thing you can give our listeners and watchers today, that they can do today if they feel over just to reclaim their power, if they're just feeling overwhelmed or just sensitive to energy?
Yes. So I have in the book, after the introduction, there is a break in case of emergency section.
Yeah.
And it's the first thing that's right here. And it's because you don't want to read a whole book when you're in crisis, right?
No.
And we have these things that are referred to as they're basically kind of affirmations, but they're core beliefs, right? And there's things that in the moment when we're in crisis, our core beliefs are, I am in trouble. I'm in crisis, right? I'm in a bad place. And what we often need to do, especially when we're in a spiritually we're in crisis, is take the reins, take the control back. So we have to rewrite that narrative. And so we have these sets of core sayings, core beliefs that I have throughout the book that helped kind of rewrite that script. And I would say start with that. And so the first one, I'll just kind of give you a little sample of it so that we're not like
The
having to
key.
memorize
Yeah.
entire things, right? But I am safe and I am protected. So you say this over and over. I'm safe and I am protected. I am worthy and I am loved. I am in control of my mind, body, and soul. Those two sentences, if you can get that to be louder than the anxiety or the fear or whatever, right? Then you'll at least get your foot in the door so that you can start prying it open to go back out and get your control. But I would say that's the number one thing is, and it's, I have to remember this too. Oh, buddy, right? Like I have to go, nope, I have control here. And there are times obviously when you don't have control, right? Like I've been in those situations where it didn't matter what I was doing, somebody else had control in the environment, and that wasn't okay. And that's a whole other level of thing that's very rare, right? That's a very rare experience in life. But most of the time, when we're dealing with things, we do have some degree of control. We just don't know it, and we have to find where that is.
I love that. Oh my gosh, thank you. You guys follow this guy. Tell us, everybody, what anything you have coming up that we should know about, where they can find you, where they can find this new book, where they can find your books, where they can follow you. Tell us all about
Yeah.
Devin.
So in October, my husband and I and some other professional psychics are all getting together in New York, and we're doing a professional psychic retreat, which is really cool. And I'm super stoked about that. It's designed to help people who are professional psychics advance their game, take it to the next level. So it's just fun to be part of this experience and to teach in this way, because usually I am teaching people who are just budding, right? They're just learning that they're psychic. And in this case, I'm dealing with people who they know, and they're ready to go help the world and take it on. And I think that's awesome. So I'm excited about that. And then the week after that in New York, same place, I'm doing the Fiber Spirit retreat with my friend Aaron Murphy Hiscock. Now, the way that I build sanctuary is I crochet and I knit and I dye yarn and I have art, right? Like art is a really important thing for me in my own personal life. And so right now in my life, fiber is art. And so that's where I'm at. But so we're doing this retreat where with Aaron at this amazing place called the Omega Institute. And that is all about blending our spirituality and the work that we do as spiritual and psychic and witches and people who are, will say awake. That's my awake. When I say I'm woke, that's my woke, because I'm woken all the way. And so I'm like, I can't go to sleep. That's the problem. But so that if you're like us and you're awake and you're alive and you're listening and you're seeing everything, you want to come hang out and you want to blend your art. That's what the Fiber Spirit Retreat is for. So it's gonna be really cool. And you can find all this shit by going to modernwitch.com. That's all there.
Modernwitch.com.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, you guys. Find Devin. Love Devin. Definitely get this book because it's a handbook. It is a handbook
Mhm.
and it's going to help us a lot. So thank you. Thank you so much for bringing your magic to the witching hour, my friend.